Hello, good morning. Today is the fourth day of the month of Tishrei. We're in a new year. This is next year, 5775. And today is also the 28th day of September. And we are gathered here again. Today's a fast day, so it's not a good day. It's a miserable day. But we're on page 38 in the book of the Four Worlds. And let me show you who ventured out today. So we say hi to Fred.
Hi, Fred.
That's Fred. And everybody else who has come out even on a fast day today with no bagels or coffee, Susan.
Bissel seltzer?
No, garnished. Halavai. Halavai, Bissel Seltzer.
Halavai.
Halavai, Halavai in Hebrew. Halavai is like I wish. That's what the word, if anybody who was in synagogue yesterday, that word lu means I wish. Just in case you were wondering. And it was in yesterday's Torah portion. Okay. We are in the meat and the heart of this essay, of this discourse, of this letter, which describes and discusses the inner workings of God. We got the four worlds. We got those down, and the four worlds are all levels, are all filter systems, if you will, for the godliness, the energy of God that comes from the most infinite, the most remote place possible. Godliness is impossible to understand, unable to comprehend. And it comes down to this world. So when the energy flows through this world, it's got to go through filtration systems to remove the intensity, remove the infinity of godliness, and to be able to create the world that we have in front of us today. We also got into the deeper elements. Beyond the four worlds, there is also the recess, the inner workings of those four worlds. Those four worlds are defined. It calls them worlds or levels, whichever word you want to call them, whichever word you want to use for them. But then you have the undefinable part of those four worlds, the origins of those four worlds. He compared it originally to the flintstone, Fred, and the flintstone has the spark in it, and yet it's not there. You've got to sort of bring it out. And even when it just comes in a second, a flash, and it's gone, the spark is gone, and the stone returns to being a stone. Or, he said, within the human mind itself, you've got the wisdom, and the wisdom is a flash that flashes out when a person is thinking and contemplating, and all of a sudden, you say, got it! And that's an exercise that is really beautiful. It might take time and energy and focus. And you got to put all the things together, and then you just try to think, it all fits in now. It all works. I got the answer to the riddle. I figured it out. And now I got it. That's that flash that comes. But that flash is just a flash. It's a spark. It comes, and it goes. And when you're left, all you're left behind with is that spark. What are you going to do with that spark? That spark goes into the next level of intellect, which is understanding. Now you have to understand what you just said. It's not good enough to have the flash. Got it. Okay, what did you get exactly? You're sure it all fits in. Okay, this piece to that piece to this piece to this one to that. Okay, got it. Works. That's the intellectual business. So before the wisdom, the thing that produces that wisdom, what produces that flash? So it's a combination of things. First of all, it's accumulated wisdom, accumulated exercises in your lives, practice, and you have years and years of what's the word I'm looking for? Years of experience. You have, and you have your own intellectual abilities. Some people are very good at math and they can think abstractly, and some are very good in physics and in and all that stuff. How to apply theories and ideas in science and in chemistry and in physics and in every area in the world. Some people's minds are very good at engineering and creating things, and other people's minds are very good at painting things, and other people are very good at writing things, and other people are very good at using their hands to help, to heal, to do what you do. You know, some people are good with their hands and not so good with their minds. They can take a plan that somebody else makes and they can fix it, they can make it, they can create it. So our minds also are part of our wisdom that give the ability for this flash to be able to come in when a person is thinking, is focusing, is trying to contemplate and to understand how to go about, how to continue. So there's a whole system in the back, which is not our brain. Our brain is just a vessel for it. It's our intellect. How do you define it? As what? And that is as a result of the soul, of the life that we have within us. The soul, the good stuff, the good side of us, resides in the brain, which is the most remote element within us. The brain, though, is just a physical vessel. If you look at the brain is a remarkable thing. We haven't even gotten to the bottom of a brain. But what fuels the brain, what gives the brain its life, its energy, is of course our life, our soul, our godliness that's within us. And when a person passes away, they can have the biggest brain in the world. That ain't going to work because the brain isn't fueled anymore. It's dead. Brain dead. So the brain is the motor, the nerve center of everything, but it's also the vessel which receives the godliness, the soul which gives us the ability to have intellect, to think. And when that's coming from a higher level, that's undefinable. In the CAT scans, that won't show up. Other stuff will, but not that. That intangible, that undefinable level. So just like it is within the human being, remember, he began the whole system over here with a premise that appears in the book of Job, that Job says, I can perceive God from my own flesh. And when you think about the mechanisms of a human being, and when God creates a human being, he says, I create this being in my image. That means that everything that we have is a metaphor as well to understand how godliness works. And just like the energy comes into us as a soul, as a life force, and it goes into the brain, and from the brain it goes into everywhere else. Similarly, when we talk about godliness coming into this world, the transition of the infinite God to this world, to grass, to trees, to tables, to chairs, to the physical coarse matter of this world, it goes through systems. And we got these four worlds that we know from elsewhere, different places, as we've discussed at length. But we also have remote before the four worlds, just like it is within the human brain, that there is this capacity, this godliness, this godly soul that's within the person. It's undefinable. Similarly, there is the higher levels before the worlds start that also channel godliness and go through this very heavy transmission of godliness, and that begins the process of the transmission until it gets down to this world, and we have the corporeal, coarse, physical matter of this world. So that's where we're holding. In the middle of the page, page number 38. And again, this is pretty deep over here. We're getting pretty into it. Do we have it, Fred?
Oh, yeah.
Wait, 16.
Have you taken out the meat of it?
Wait, there's some.
Yeah, it's not in here.
Oh, wait, here's some.
This one's coming.
You got it?
You got one? That must be all messed up.
It is.
This one probably is good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the beginning of it? Is it
No,
page
might
38?
be-
34,
But
36. Very good, Fred. All right.
but we don't need it.
We will now.
Oh, we do need
I
it.
just heard the door.
No, that was
It's
just
on.
Padina.
But we'll leave it here.
Okay.
It's there for the next one.
Was that a bird?
It's a phone.
Phones.
Oh,
Today you can be in the house and hear trains and planes,
Yeah, it looks nice.
gunfire and birds, and it's all phones. All right, page 38 in the middle of the page, Atzilut. Atzilut is the word that is used for the highest world. The highest of the four worlds, the world of emanation. That's the world of Atzilut. Atzil means to emanate. It also means other things, but that's the main translation of the word because it is so close to God. It is the emanation of God. It's a world of God. This is also a metaphor. This is what we just said now about the recesses of the mind and the brain and the intellect of a person is also a metaphor for the metziut of Atzilut. Okay, the word metziut means the presence, the existence. The word Atzilut, of course, is that highest world of emanation. Now, as I just mentioned, that the world of Atzilut is defined as a world, it's easy for me to say, as a world of godliness. What does that mean? If it's a world, then it has a beginning and an end. It's defined. If it's godliness, you're talking about the essence of God, there is no definition. There's no beginning and end. There's no limitations. There's no nothing. So what does it mean, a world of godliness? And why would we say that? Because the next world is called by Isaiah and by the Kabbalists as the world of creation, which means that something new has happened here. When you use the term bara or bariah, which is the second word of the Torah, in the beginning God created, Bereshit bara. Bara, when you use the term created, it's a new thing, never here before. In Hebrew, when you use that term, in other words, and we've mentioned this many times before, when a human being creates something, when you create this table, you're actually not really creating it. I know it's semantics, but still, you're not creating this table. You're taking existing material and you're turning it into a table. You're not creating it. You're just reforming it. You're forming it. You're making it. But you're not creating it. When you use the term creation, especially in Hebrew, it means that you've created something from nothing, which we cannot do. No human being can create something from nothing. You can get close to it. You can get a good metaphor of it. When you put a seed in the ground and you create a fruit, you put an apple seed in the ground and a fruit and an apple tree comes out of it. And that's like creating something from nothing because the seed is nothing. It's so beyond comparison to what's going to come out of it. Furthermore, the seed itself has to decompose, it has to fall apart, has to completely be destroyed before the tree will be created. The seed is only in a direction to the earth. It's as if you're saying to the earth, all right, now we want an apple tree. But it's the earth that creates the apple tree. So the seed is nothing. It's just the instruction. It's just the DNA. And it could be the same thing with the human being. You have two human beings. Take, for example, my parents. May they live and be well. Some of you have had an opportunity to meet them at the wedding. And they'll be back again sometime this coming year. At least my father will. So you have two people. They had 15 children. Kenai Nahara. Now, if you put all the 15 together, it doesn't seem, that two people can produce those 15. And that's just a 15. Then each of those 15 has a partner, has a wife or a husband. Okay, now we're up to 30 people. Now, those 30 people have produced over 100 descendants. And we're still growing. The younger ones are just getting started. I'm the oldest of the 15. So I have a brother who's 25, yeah. 26. He's 24 years younger than me.
You didn't grow up with him in the house.
I was married when we got married when he was 5 months old. No, so I was long out of the house. I was out of the house 18 years before he was born. Oh, no, what am I talking about? No, hold on. I was out of the house 8 years before he was born, right.
Wow.
And we all have the same parents. And if you look at the tribe that has come out of these two people, just two individuals, it's over 100 descendants. And it's continuing to grow because our children are having children already. The older ones. Five of us are grandparents already. And within the next 5 years, I think 10 of us will be grandparents. Next 10 years, 10 of us will be grandparents. 15, who knows? Well,
Right.
So try to compare now the 100 or so descendants, and each one of them is different, is unique, is special in one area to what produced that. How did you? There was no comparison. So it's like nothing. When you have children, it's like something from nothing. Not that there's nothing. Of course, something has to produce it. But the when you compare the two, it's like there is so much talent and so much energy and so much going on in that of direct descendants. I'm not even talking about now, like the rest of the family. My first cousin called me yesterday, the day before Rosh Hashanah. I have to wish a good year. One of my cousins, I have many first cousins. I have over 60 first cousins without spouses. So there's a lot of them. And so some of them I'm very close with. Others I haven't seen in 30 years, some of them, literally. So we're not that close and we don't live in the same place. And when they're making weddings, we're in Atlanta, they're in Israel, or they're in New York, or wherever. But my cousin called me, he says, I have a dream. I have a dream. He says, I want to make one big thing for the cousins. I said, in our cousins, besides this Lou family, all the other Lou's, or whatever names they may have, they are either in Israel or in the New York area. They're in New Jersey, in Lakewood, or in Muncie, or in Brooklyn, or something. We, though, all over the world. This one's in Atlanta, this one's in Arizona, it's Chabad. We're all over the place. In California, and I have siblings in England. So the best thing to do is to wait for a wedding of one of our siblings. We're making one of our siblings making a wedding in New York, and then we just bring everybody in. I said, but then wait a minute. I said, then you're talking about what, 300, 400, 500 people coming from our grandparents now. That's besides the ones who are in Israel that we can't include. That's from just my grandparents. You're talking about hundreds who are around now. My grandparents had 8 children, and one of them didn't have any children of his own, and one of them has only 2, and it's still.
Are they all rabbis? Like you're a rabbi?
Not necessarily. No.
Was your grandfather was a rabbi?
No. My father's father was a Jew that came from Bialystok. Came out of those days. It was Russia. Came to the United States in the teens. He had to learn the language. He became a lawyer, a real estate lawyer, that type of lawyer. And those days, it was, first of all, you couldn't find a college that let a Jew in, let alone an observant Jew. And those days, to pass the bar, you had to go to court, and all of the court proceedings was on a Friday. And he went to the court in Manhattan. This is in 1920, in late 20s. And he had been accused by the professors of cheating because he never took his tests on the Shabbos. He always had to take them on Sunday. And he said, yeah, because you're listening to everybody else is telling you the answers. And he says, no, I wasn't with the other people. It was a Shabbos thing, I didn't even have a chance to meet them all. But they accused him of that because who kept Shabbos those days? Who kept Shabbos in the 20s in the United States? It's a very different world. You couldn't do that. Anyway, so he went to the court, and his turn hadn't come up. He had to argue something in court to pass the bar. And it was 2:00 in the afternoon. It was a winter week, and Shabbos was coming. And about an hour and a half, he had to hit the subway home. An hour and a half before Shabbos, he turned around and started putting on his coat. And the judge says to him, Mr. Lou, where are you going? He says, in an hour and a half we'll start the Shabbos, the Sabbath, and I can't travel on that day, and I live too far to walk, and I cannot take the subway, and so I have to go home. And the judge said to him, do you realize that if you leave now, 4 years of your work can go down the drain? Might have to start again. And he said, it's very, very important. I've put my life, my heart and soul and my life into this. But God says not to do this on the Sabbath. And he continued to put on his coat. And the judge said, Mr. Lou, you've passed the bar exam.
Oh.
Says a man who can be that serious, that convinced, the conviction is so strong, you're not a cheater. And I know that you'll be a good lawyer. Every single person, Jew in Brooklyn, used him till the 80s. And I remember him sitting in his office and still closing on houses. All he did was houses, homes and houses and businesses, that kind of thing. That was my grandfather.
Yeah, I went to a store and borrowed.
He had no beard.
Checked and they saw the name and they said, are you related to David Williams? Yes. And he closes my house on the store.
We're taking that. We've benefited from that over the years.
Wow.
And he did not have a beard. He was not a Hasidic Jew. He was, but he was a Jew. He was a committed all the way. He knew the entire Torah by heart, word for word. He would lead the services on Rosh Hashanah and pray and read from the Torah all the time. That was him. So from him and his wife, who died 2 weeks before I was born, hundreds of people. How do you compare the origins to the outcome? There's no comparison. That's the point. So when you create something, a creation of something is considered as though it's from nothing. Not because there's nothing creating it, because what created it is either so remote, so godly, so undefined that you just say, there's nothing there that I can comprehend, or there is no comparison to what started this, to what the results, what the outcome was. So that's why the second world is called the world of creation. Why is it called the world of creation in the book of Isaiah? Because the creation means it's from nothing. There's no comparison to the second world than to the first world. The first world is so godly. It's like everything in there is so godly. It's made up of so much godliness that in the second world it's created. It's like a creation. It's as if there's nothing before it because there's no comprehension from those who are in the second world to those who are in the first world. If you remember, over the high holidays, I was talking about Kedusha. Kedusha is the time during the repetition when you have to stand and put your feet together and the angels are saying these words. And one of the times I said that the angels are described as spinning wheels and holy animals, and ones are jumping up and down. We actually do a little jump by some of the words. The reason is because those angels are so removed from the upper worlds of Atzilus, of the highest world, that they get very, they're not used to this. And this godliness that comes into them, into that world, charges them. Like they get very, very excited because this is something they haven't seen before. They have no real comprehension of, so they continue metaphorical, jumping around and spinning around because of the great godliness that's coming to them. But in the world of Atzilus, godliness is the norm there. That's what it is. And that's what he's saying. He's going to begin up with. This is a metaphor. The metaphor that we said about this remoteness of the mind, of the intellect of a person, is also the metaphor, not just for what comes before the four worlds, but is for the world of Atzilus to the rest of the worlds. Because that is as remote to the rest of the worlds as that early godliness is to all of the worlds. So this metaphor is also used for the first world, the world of Atzilus, the world that is filled with godliness. Now let's see it inside. This is also a metaphor for the Metziut, for the existence of Atzilut, of the highest world. Although it is only a revelation of what was hidden. Atzilus is a revelation of something that was previously concealed. Just like your mind, your intellect is a revelation of something that was really remote, hidden, and intangible, incomprehensible, and is compared to a flame lit from another, meaning that nothing is removed. When you light one flame from another, the first flame doesn't lose anything. It's just, you just touch it and it continues on without the previous one losing anything. Nevertheless, it is no longer the non-metziut from which it emerges. When something emerges from something else, when you create something, you're creating it from nothing, meaning that it becomes a sort of, it comes from a non-entity. A non-entity doesn't mean nothing, but it means that it's indefinable, it's indescribable, it's intangible, it's incomprehensible. It's something that you can't put your hands on it. Similar, again, to our own minds. We don't know what's going on in the recesses of our minds. And when we try to dig into that, it's just a flash that comes out. That's it. What's cooking in there, though, we don't know. We know our experiences. We remember certain things. We store certain things in our minds. But we don't know how the combination, we don't know the ingredients of creating that wisdom, that flash that gives us the ability to get it. And this is in every single field. I know it, and I said this before, from the Good Shabbos emails or from the sermons that I get. These are, you put together certain things, and some of them read better than others. But when you try to put together a story to a Devat Torah, they're two different worlds. When you want to put something together, you want to have thoughts that flow and ideas that you want to explain, you've got to really think. You've got to think hard. You've got to think deep into your mind. And not always are you going to be successful, because your mind doesn't have that. Can't do it. Doesn't have the capacity to do it. Doesn't have the ability. Some people can't write. What do you mean? Why can't you write? What do you mean why? I don't have that. It's not in my fingers. It's not in my hand. I don't know how to do it. Oh, but if you want me to fix, I can do that. And the people who write say, I can't fix that. But what do you mean? It's so simple. Just take this and then. That's how it is. So our minds are wired differently. We don't know what's going on in the back. We don't know what's cooking. We don't know the ingredients. And we can't be certain. We can't be sure of the outcome necessarily in fields that we don't know much about. As Mel said to me, Rabbi, you write the Good Shabbos email, I'll build the sukkah. And just like I don't mix into the Good Shabbos email, you don't mix into the building of the sukkah. And that's the healthiest way, you see? Because Mel is a great expert in building sukkahs. I'm not sure if I'm an expert in doing Good Shabbos emails, but I know I am no expert in building sukkahs. That I do know. So, therefore, his mind works in one way, and my mind just works in a different way, and that's what makes this world. So, but we don't know how that works. Now, why can't I build a sukkah, for crying out loud? Why don't I know how to do these things? And sometimes
we've been asking.
And sometimes I can tell you that sometimes it bothers me, and sometimes I'm embarrassed. I just don't know how to do this. You're telling me that I don't. What do you mean? You're such a schlemazel. Yes, I am.
But both things are coming from the same creative
Same-
part of your mind.
Coming from a brain that looks the same. My brain and his brain look the same.
But it's also coming from the
Physically.
part of the mind that's
Left side.
left side brain, creativity, so.
Right side brain is creativity, left side is logic.
Okay, but building a sukkah and writing come from the same,
You use both sides.
Well,
You really do use both
okay,
sides.
maybe.
Yeah. You can't write without having the left, but you need the ideas to come from the right. And it's the same thing with the building. You've got to have the ideas of how to put it all together, but the left side to actually implement it.
So the left side is dominant in this one because the building is a lot more detailed.
No, you're
As
very
far as I'm
creative
concerned,
guy.
I'm what?
You're very right-sided.
I could be very creative.
Yes,
I
you're
can
very
I can
creative.
suggest to Mel maybe we should put this on this side and that on this side. If and Mel can say, all right, that makes sense. Or as he usually says, could you do me a favor and just stick to the Good Shabbos email? So
Training and experience come into play too.
Yes.
Very much so. And but there are people that I know that are not trained in anything. They can fix the world. These little kids can come in and take apart your computer in a half a second, and you've been sitting on this computer for years, and hey, how did you get what? Where is that coming from? So you can say experience. You could also say that there are people who are wired like that. It's just and we don't know how that works exactly, because ultimately you can say left side and right side, but it comes from a deeper part than the left or the right. It's coming from something else in there. Anyway, so that's also a metaphor for the world, the highest world, versus the next three worlds. The highest world is such a godly world that it seems that the next worlds are not coming from nothing. There's not nothing. It's just not, we can't comprehend it. Just so we can't comprehend the back of our minds. We don't know the origins, the depth of we just don't know it. So nevertheless, it is no longer the non-Metziut from which it emerges. It's not anymore, it doesn't. So because the world of creation follows the world of emanation, there is no comparison. It doesn't look like its origin anymore. You can say cause and effect, but the cause that causes the effect looks like the cause. So if something causes something else to happen, so let's say you're lighting a fire, well, the effect looks like the cause. Or the child looks like one of the parents. You can tell. There's a stamp on the children, on the offspring. But that's a cause and effect. But then there are things that are created that you can't even see the cause. And therefore it looks like a non-entity, because where's it coming from? It looks like coming from nothing. It is like the revealed flame that emerges from concealment. It's like that Flintstone again, which is clearly extracted through striking, not touching. A regular flame is a cause and effect. I have a cause in my hand, I kindle the other thing, and now it's affected the other thing. It's also a fire. But a Flintstone, there is no cause and effect. Where did that come from? It came from that rock that's in the water. What? A fire coming from? Yeah, it came from there. Well, where is it? It went away. It's just a spark. It's not here anymore. But so this fire looks like it doesn't compare to the non-entity. This fire doesn't look like a rock. It doesn't look like a spark. It looks like a fire. This indicates that the flame derives from non-metziut, coming from that Flintstone. It's coming from a non-entity, really. The spark is not really an entity. It's a spark. It's a flash. It comes and goes. In comparison to the revealed flame, which is, of course, a fire, which is burning, which is existing, it's burning up things and so on. For the 10 sfirot of Atzilut, the 10 levels that are in this world, this highest world of the emanation, are the source for the worlds which do not possess Metziut. In other words, that are which do possess. I read it not. Why do I read not possess? Which do possess Metziut. In other words, these the levels of the world of Atzilut are the source of other worlds that do feel like an entity, that do seem like a fire, not a spark. And so there's no real comparison. Just like you would have for all the four worlds as something that's greater than higher, you also have it for the world of Atzilut in comparison with the next three worlds. The world of Atzilut is this remote godliness that when you look at what was created from it, that doesn't look like godliness anymore. It looks like a new creation. Creation meaning something from nothing. And what's in that world are angels and souls and so on, but those angels don't get a little excited when they see godliness because they're not used to seeing it. Whereas in the world of Atzilut, godliness is prevalent. And the people who come from Atzilut, the souls that derive from that world, you can also notice that there is a palpable godliness within those people. They're bringing with them a soul that dominates even their physical existence. Like someone like Moses, that the Torah calls in the last portion of the Torah, it says, this is the blessing for Zos HaBracha. That's the name of the Parsha. For Zos HaBracha. This is the bracha, the blessing that Moses, Ish HaElokim, the man of God, shared with the rest of the people. What does a man of God mean? It means that whenever you look at this person, you see a man, but you also see God in that person. You can see God in every person. Sure, you got to look. Sometimes you got to dig. But with Moses, it was clear, it was apparent. And Moses in all generations, with the Rebbe, you were in his presence, even when he was walking from one place to another, you stopped because this was a person who commanded a respect, a godly respect, because he was so connected to God. And everything he did was just perfectly godly. However, the metziut of Atzilut, when you say the entity of Atzilut, it is not a true metziut. It's not a true entity because it's a world of God. So therefore, it's not an entity the way we would describe an entity. An entity has a beginning, it has an end, it has a depth, it has a width, it has a breadth. It is an entity, it is something. The world of Atzilut is not that type of entity, but rather the absence of non-metziut. Gosh, that's a double negative, isn't it? An absence, it's missing the fact that it's a non-entity. It's not a non-entity. So a non-entity means that it would be completely godly and fully godly, and all it is godliness, and godliness is not an entity. Godliness is God. And therefore, you can't describe and define God in any kind of way. You can't say he's wise, and you can't say he's strong. You can't say he's rich, and you can't say he's poor. You can't say he's happy. You can't say he's sad. Well, wait a minute. Doesn't the Torah say that God will be happy, God will be sad? That's when you get to godliness in the worlds. But when you talk about godliness higher than the worlds, the essence of godliness, nothing that you can do could phase that kind of entity. You're talking about a God that is, as we say, Adon Olam. He is the complete, no one to consult with. He's just like completely alone. He doesn't need anything else. There's no need. There's nothing that if you define him as happy, then he's not sad. If you define him as sad, he's not happy. And if you define him as angry, there's no definition. That's the God we believe in. That's the God that is indescribable. That's the God that's indefinable. That's the God that's beyond anything, omniscient.
So then why do the prayers often say or refer to God's anger?
Right. Or the Torah refers to God's anger, God's strength, God's might, God's
Isn't that,
wrath, God's happiness.
isn't that for our benefit? It gives us a better visualization of his reactions and
So when you get lower than that part of the infinite God, when after that transmission to the worlds, when you get into those levels, and you get the world of Atzilut, let's say, then there's definitions. Because that godliness has arrived there, has left the confines of the indescribable and has gone into a description of worlds. So we're talking to a God that's to the God level that's lower than that. But when we say Baruch Atah, blessed are you, there is no definition, it's just you. Is God male or female? What a stupid question. God creates both males and females, and he has both feminine and masculine aspects, but not in the highest level. He's just God. There's no male or female there. He wants both of them in the world, but he's not a male or female. Why do we call him male? Because it's a form of speech. That's how, you say, the person went over there and he did this. Or in order to celebrate Chol HaMoed, a person has to do this and he's got to do that. Only he, not she. It's just a form of speech. That's how you speak. There's nothing that in God that's more feminine or more masculine or vice versa. It doesn't work that way. So it's completely without definition. But in order for us to sort of have some kind of a relationship, we've got to bring God into our minds. You cannot possibly, no human being can possibly understand or comprehend this. Moses asks God after the sin of the golden calf, and God seems to be very giving and forgiving. And so Moses says, can you show me your face? We'll be reading this, by the way, 2 weeks from yesterday. On Shabbos, after the first 2 days of Sukkot, we'll be reading that part of the Torah. And he says, can you show me your face? God has a face. What are you talking about? Moses should know better than that. And God says, no, you can't see my face. You can only see my back. Huh? Like, so what he was asking for is, I want to see the inner workings. I want to be able to comprehend who you are. God says, no, you cannot see that. You can see what's, what I've allowed you, the backside, the lower side, but you can't see that. No person can see that. Lo yirani ha'adam v'chai. No person can see me and continue to live, to exist. Because ultimately, if you knew God, if you understood God, you're also God. Try to figure him out. Well, if you figured him out, then you're him. If you got his mind, then then good. Then you like him. When we're not him, it's not possible. It's not even comprehensible. It's not even possible to understand why we can't understand him. Because there's no understanding. Understanding doesn't exist when you talk about God. So we, in the Torah and in our prayers and whatever, we need to give God some humanity, just so we can understand it. So the Torah talks about the hand of God and the arm of God and the finger of God. Torah talks about God being happy and God being angry, God being unhappy, God being full of wrath. These are metaphors, just that we should be able to get a comprehension of what's happening over here. Ultimately, though, God is not a God of wrath, and he's not a God of... If anything, he's only a God of kindness. And as our sages say, no bad comes from God. There's no evil that comes from God. He creates evil in this world just to balance good. But the badness doesn't come down from him. But wait a minute, what about, I know. What about this one suffering? We know. It's not bad. Which is what I said by Rosh Hashanah, we say, Shana Tova. We have a good year. But we add Shana Tova Umetuka. When we dip that apple in the honey, we say, may it be a good year and a sweet year. What's a sweet year? Because goodness can be translated in so many different ways. And maybe after 10 years, you can realize that, when that happened, that was really a good thing. It was a bad thing at the time, but now I think back, I see it's a good thing. That's a good thing. But when we say sweet, there's no mistaking. When you put something in your mouth, it's either sweet or not sweet. You can define it immediately. It tastes like honey or it tastes like lemons. You know immediately. Not that you make lemon juice out of lemons. This is honey. So we're asking not just for a good year, we're asking for a sweet year. That should be palpable. We should be able to feel it. We should be able to appreciate that goodness of the year. Not just then, maybe down the road, but now. A sweet year for this year. Not in 10 years from now that we should know that it was good after going through all whatever troubles we had to go through. So, but really, in reality, though, things come from God that are not bad. He doesn't want to see anything. He doesn't want to see people hurting. Doesn't want to see the pain. Doesn't want to see the tears. But wait a minute, why are so many people crying? Why are so many people hurting? Why are so many people suffering? I don't know. I don't know how to answer that because I'm not God. That's the point. The point is we're not God. So we got to give some humanity to God only for us to comprehend, are we doing the right thing or the wrong thing? Is this a miracle or is this not? In our minds, which are very limited, we can only bring definitions and then we can think about them. But ultimately, though, God is not about high hands and anger and happiness. It's not even an entity. It's something that we can't define.
Question. The world of Atzilot, this world of emanations, is really even too high for us to comprehend because it's
well said. Yes.
Maybe like a world of potentiality.
It's a world of godliness.
Yes, godliness, and there are beings in that world.
Souls and angels.
Now, with that said, what my question is, then God, as God, exists even beyond that. In other words, that's the first world, but he is even above and beyond that.
Okay.
World, right?
Okay. So the question is?
That's my question.
Which is? Please define your question.
I'm just.
Is that how it is? That's what we've been discussing. Way beyond that. God is beyond any kind of world, any kind of definition, any kind of limitation. The God that we truly believe in, that God, is way beyond anything that's even possible for us to comprehend. All of this just is to give us a glimpse and an understanding of, first of all, how great God is. Second of all, how low we are. Third of all, most importantly, once we got that straight, then we can understand how wonderful it is that this great remote essence of godliness has said, I want you to complete this mission on my behalf. That's the idea here. So yes, God is. That's how the structure of prayer works. If you read the beginning of the prayers, God's this, God's that, the great, the wonderful. You say these words every day.
Mhm.
You say to yourself, does he need this? No, it's for us. It's just for us to be able to contemplate on what we're dealing with here. And at the end, we say Shema Yisrael. It's all a build-up for the Shema and the Amidah. We say Shema Yisrael. This is our God. And he wants us to love him, and he wants us to put tefillin, and he wants us to serve him, and to keep Rosh Hashanah, and to hear the shofar, and to fast on Yom Kippur. He wants that from us. Wow! It lifts us up. That's the point. And there's build-ups to this. First, you start with the praise of God, and then you get to the praise of the people, the Jewish people. And he creates this. He creates all the angels jumping out of them. But then he came on Sinai, and he said, "I want you." The structure of prayers is very defined so that we should have an opportunity to get into the greatness of God. Then we should be able to realize how far away we are. He gives numbers to the stars, and he creates the snow, and he creates the rain and the wind, and this and that. That's like, whoa. And then we get to the point and then he took you out of Egypt. And he wants you to do this. He brought you close, and he's asking you to serve him and to worship him. Wow, these are amazing words. And then we get to the Amidah, and we say, blessed are you, God. We're talking to the essence here. And grant us wisdom, and grant us the weekday Amidah. And grant us healing, and grant us forgiveness, and a good year, and bring Mashiach. That's what we're praying for, the things that we need in the Amidah. But we're standing up, and we have our feet together, and we are entreating. We're praying 3 times a day, we do that. So we're talking to the essence of God, but the prayers are to bring it down to our level. Is that the greatness of God, that he creates rain and wind? Think about it. And for us, yes, that's what we need. That's our world needs this. So, let's start again this paragraph. However, the Metziut of Atzilut, the entity of this highest world, is not a true Metziut, it's not a true entity, but rather the absence of non-Metziut. It's not a non-entity. That means it is an entity, but it's not quite an entity. In its transition from non-Metziut, from the great ultimate godliness to becoming Atzilut, it becomes a source for Metziut. In other words, it could create the next worlds after it, which are created worlds, the world of creation, but it itself does not possess true Metziut. It's not a true entity because it's a world of godliness. Hence, the Metziut of Atzilut is called Reshima, a new Hebrew word. That Hebrew word means a mark or a note. A mark, some kind of stain, some kind of mark that's left behind, but not quite. Is a stain an entity? I don't know. If you blow on the window and you say, "Hi, Mom," and you write it out in your fingers, or in the snow, on the ice, is that considered an entity? Or in the smoke, on the dust in the back of a truck, I am the greatest. Are those words an entity, or are they a non-entity? It's a mark, but that mark can just go, and you can blow the whole thing off, or you can just take a rag and it's gone. So is it an entity or non-entity? On Shabbos, one is forbidden to write. So the question is, if one writes in this non-entity writing, you're not writing on a paper, you're just writing on the window. Is that considered writing on Shabbos? If you write with invisible ink, so the ink, you're writing it, and all of a sudden it's gone. Is that considered writing or not? These are issues that are discussed in law. Anyway, but a non-entity would mean not quite a non-entity. It's there, but it's there as a mark because we have no other way to define it. It's not a definition because it's a world of godliness, yet it's a world. And so since it's called a world, it's not quite godly anymore, so it doesn't have that non-entity to it, yet it's still not a full, true entity. So he's using a different word, a mark, a stain, an impression. And what's about this impression? Next week when we have some coffee and bagels and cream cheese, and those good new bagels, by the way, then we can concentrate a lot better.